in if you're doing so. And if you joined us this morning on the news, thank you for waking up with us. Things are still very quiet out there across central Arkansas, but this is kind of check in to talk about what's coming this afternoon, this evening, in case you got anybody that's headed up to northwest Arkansas for that Razorback game, as well as maybe trying to get out to take in the last couple hours of the Arkansas State Fair here in central Arkansas. So what we have up now is a look at that radar across the state this morning. We are starting to have a few showers moving in with a few embedded rumbles of thunder into northwest Arkansas. Let's take a zoom in to see primarily west right now of that I-49 corridor, but can we take Storm Track 11 right quick? We're gonna take a quick look at one of those RDOT cameras. This is in Fayetteville, if I'm not mistaken. This is at Razorback Road up in Fayetteville. This is pointed north, but you can see kind of off to the left-hand side of your screen creeping towards the northwest. You're starting to see some of those storm clouds rolling in again as those storms start to make their way into the state. Can we take things back to Max 1? Thank you, Brett. Now, we're going to zoom out here for a second. This is what I want you to pay attention to. We've got that cold front that's off to our northwest, straight through portions of Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So ahead of that is where we're starting to see kind of those first few rounds of rain moving into northwest Arkansas, and through the afternoon and evening ahead of that front, as it's moving south and east, we'll see more of that opportunity for severe weather. I'm going to pause here just to say I have our comments up on YouTube and Facebook. So as you're watching along, if you have any questions, put those in the chat so I can answer them. The plan here is to stream for about 20 to 30 minutes. Again, not much active weather here at the moment to cover, but this is kind of a forecast for what's coming up this afternoon and evening. So again, thank you for joining us on THV 11 Plus or on Facebook or on our YouTube. And if you don't want to ask your questions on either of those platforms, you can always text those into us at 501-376-1111. So what we're going to take a look at now are those dew points, because when we talk about the ingredients needed for severe weather, one of those ingredients is that moisture in the air. So you can almost pick out where that front is based off of the moistness or dryness of that air mass over in the Texas Panhandle. Amarillo right now with a dew point of 37. That's very dry air, which ahead of that, locations like Houston, dew points in the middle 70s, not that juicy. Here in Arkansas, we're seeing dew points in the lower to middle 60s, but still that is indicative of some type of moisture in the air. I'm already starting to see people on the YouTube asking some questions. So I'm going to get through this presentation, and if anything is unanswered by the end, we'll circle back to do a question and answer portion, if that's okay. Brett, can you bring it back to me, please? So again, if you're just now tuning in, I'm meteorologist Symone Thomas. If you woke up with us this morning, you heard a number of times that we do have a THV 11 weather impact alert in effect today, primarily for this afternoon and evening. Let me scoot over some so you can see the text behind me. Due to the confidence of those strong to severe storms. So all modes of severe weather are on the table. The most likely hazard we'll see will be the damaging wind gusts of 60 miles an hour or greater. There is some ingredients there for large hail being defined as quarter size or greater. I think max hail size could be up to golf ball size, but I'll show you that map here in a second on where that greatest risk is. And there is the potential for a brief tornado, but the tornado threat is very low. Middle afternoon to evening, so the entire day not a bust. The morning, as we've seen, already fairly nice. If we can take graphics full, I'll show you our severe map for the day. Level 2 out of 5 or slight risk across the entire state. Now this is considered low end, but due to the fact that we might have people traveling up to northwest Arkansas for the game, or people just wanting to go out to the fair, just in general, it's a Saturday, you want to get outside. These storms could interrupt those plans, so we want to make sure you're weather aware. One moment, I'm just reading over some of your comments, make sure I'm not missing anything. So let's break this down specifically by impacts. As I mentioned a second ago, it's likely that those strong winds those 60-mile-an-hour or greater winds are going to be the most probable hazard. The scenario is that we'll have a line of storms moving through ahead of that cold front. Typically, when you have more of a linear kind of shape to those storms, that's where you're going to get more of those straight line wind events. Not to say you can't get a brief spin up tornado, but this is a scenario that favors more of a brief spin up tornado versus one of those strong long track tornadoes. So the tornado threat is not zero, but it's low. It's at a slight risk or 5% chance across the state of a brief tornado spinning up in that line of storms. And then, as I mentioned, that hail risk anywhere from quarter size to golf ball size, with the greatest risk across northwest Arkansas, west central Arkansas, and into the Arkansas River Valley. So think about cities like Fayetteville, down to Fort Smith, even down to Mena or DeQueen, and then about as east, getting into locations like Russellville. The closer you get to central or even northeastern Arkansas, the lower that chance gets. And just as a whole, the southeastern kind of third of the state, really not much of a concern for the hail there. So that is what we're looking at as far as the risk this afternoon and evening. We do have a question up on Facebook. I'm headed back to Saline County from Nashville. What should I expect for the car ride? So it sounds like if you're coming from Tennessee, you'll be traveling I-40 kind of across the eastern half of the state. You'll have a little bit more time versus people that are maybe in the western half of the state on that I-40 corridor. Storms are going to move through west to east, and we'll likely start to see more of those impacts by early afternoon. Now, you'll probably likely make it home or get close to home from Nashville before things start to get really rowdy in Saline County, but we'll talk more about that timing here in a second. We mentioned the different risks of severe weather as far as the wind risk, the hail risk, and the tornado risk. There is a very small flooding risk as well as this. With this, the greater flood risk is going to stay to our north in Missouri, but marginal flood risk across the state today. Now, if you've been following along with Tom and maybe even Nathan the past couple of days, we've been talking about how our two high resolution models, the HER and the graph, have been disagreeing a little bit with the timing of this. I think the HER was moving a little bit slower than the graph was, or vice versa, however it was with the timing of this. But when we woke up this morning, with that 6Z outlook, and probably as we're going through the stream, as the 12Z data starts to come in, they're a little bit more on the same page as far as what time these storms start to roll through. The snapshot we're looking at right now is 1 p.m. To the right-hand side of your screen is the HER, to the left-hand side is the graph. So at 1 p.m., both of them kind of indicate that line is starting to approach northwest Arkansas. By 5 p.m., both of them are in agreement around the fact that we'll start to see that line impacting central Arkansas. Now, where they disagree is A, maybe the strength of some of those storms, and B, how much rain is still lingering behind in the western half of the state as that main line starts to move east. So for the sake of presentation, let's look with the HER model and that output to the right-hand side of your screen for timing. Again, this is going to be more of a linear type of formation of these storms ahead of a cold front, which when you get that linear formation favors more of those straight line winds versus those long track tornadoes. Not to say we can't see a brief spin up tornado, but that tornado risk is significantly smaller when you have more of that linear formation of storms versus those individual supercells. I say that because it looks like we have a few people asking about supercells and whether or not there will be a tornado threat, which I'll show you the tornado risk here in a second. But let's start with the future radar using our HER model. This is what things are allegedly looking like right now. Again, those models don't give you a definitive, this is what's going to happen. This tells you what the trends look like. Well, through the rest of the morning and afternoon, cloud cover increasing in central Arkansas as that line of storm starts to approach. By 1 o'clock, which at this point is about 90 minutes before kickoff at that game, could possibly see some thunderstorms happening around the Fayetteville area. SEC rules say if you have lightning strikes within an 8-mile radius of the stadium, that's a 30-minute delay. So at 1 o'clock, that would not indicate a delay, but once we get to 2:30, if we're still seeing lightning, game wouldn't start till 3. If we get to 3 o'clock, still seeing lightning, that's 3:30. So prepare for delays, although it looks like right now your trip up to Fayetteville will be pretty smooth. 4 o'clock. looks like the strongest storms in that line impacting some of the River Valley and West Central Arkansas, but if they're towards Fayetteville, could possibly still see some rain, maybe even some thunderstorm activity starting to move east of that I-49 corridor. So again, this is not exactly what's going to happen. This gives us an idea of the trends, but if by 4 o'clock, again, we're still picking up on even a couple strikes of thunder, that might pose some delays. So just look forward to that game, possibly not starting until maybe that 3:30 to 4:30, somewhere in that time range. Unlikely that that game will start on time. But again, 4 o'clock is when things are starting to impact what could be cities from Mountain Home down to just west of Clinton, maybe Russellville and Hot Springs, picking up on some storm at this point. I think in the capital city, the storms are starting to approach, but at 4 o'clock, might not quite be stormy just yet. Now between 4 and 7, that line is moving through what is considered the most central part of the state. But at 7, we're still tracking what it looks like those storms extending from northeast Arkansas down to southwest Arkansas. So Jonesboro, down through Brinkley, Conway, Little Rock and Stuttgart, through Pine Bluff, through Camden, could possibly still be dealing with those showers and thunderstorms. And by 10 o'clock, when you're hopefully checking in with me for your nightly news and weather at 10, looks like that line is starting to cross the Mississippi River. And as that front is starting to move through the state, could possibly still see some isolated spotty rain coverage that'll move through kind of the northern half of the state, but that's out of here by your Sunday morning. Sunday, we got some high pressure moving in, so we'll see not only more sunshine, but behind that cold front, cooler temperatures. If you see now, we have that northerly wind flow into Sunday, as opposed to today ahead of the storms, that southerly wind flow. Let's take a pause right here. Let me see if we have any questions before I proceed. Somebody asked about the severity impact of Southwest Arkansas. Severe weather risk the same across the entire state. Level 2 out of 5 or slight risk. Greatest hazard is probably going to be those strong winds. Somebody asked, do you think any supercells could fire up in front of the line? Not to say that is completely out of the question, because looking at this stream, 2:30, 3 o'clock, main line still in the Arkansas River Valley, but it's picking up on some isolated what probably could be supercells in north central Arkansas. But it does not look like, based off of this, they will have a whole lot of strength to them. But if you are to get any supercells ahead of that main line, that will offer a better chance of a brief tornado versus in the main line itself. So as that line, though, as you see, gets closer to central Arkansas, it's eating up kind of that energy. We're not going to have a lot of storms out ahead of that. I hope that answers your question. Let me see if we have any questions on any of our other platforms again before I move on, because I don't want anybody to miss anything. All right. It doesn't look like any new questions. So let's talk about this in the context of the tornado risk, because obviously when we hear severe weather, most people's ears perk up and they're wondering, is there going to be a tornado with this? Tornado risk or tornado parameter, very low this morning across primarily what's considered the northwestern half of the state, where you see a lot of that gray. I think up towards northwest Arkansas, if anything, there's a little bit of kind of that orangey, yellowy color. That's still very low in risk. Now through 1 o'clock, when that line is starting to approach, still very low end tornado risk. So this doesn't really favor any strong, long-lived tornadoes. Again, if anything, best case or worst case scenario is a brief spin up tornado that's embedded in that line of storms. Even as this line starts to move through the central part of the state, that tornado risk is still very low. We're seeing that gray shaded color, and that will continue through 10 o'clock as those storms are moving out of the state. I don't know if you can tell by that because of the bug at the bottom with the time and the THV 11. I don't know if that's blocking it for you to see, but as those storms cross the Mississippi River, there's a bigger tornado risk moving into central Mississippi, where you see more of those yellows. So the good thing is we don't have that concern necessarily here closer to home. But again, after that front or after that main line moves through overnight into Sunday, we could still see some isolated rain coverage that'll sweep through the northern half of the state, but not much of a tornado risk there. So the bottom line is, once that main line of storms moves through your neighborhood, your severe risk drops off. Any rain you see after that will just give you some nice sleeping sounds or white noise to go to sleep to tonight. So really need to be weather aware as that line approaches you and moves through the state. So now your next question is probably, well, Symone, what time do you think the line is going to move through my neighborhood? Well, here's the answer to that. Now it's 9:15 now. So we're already starting to see kind of the first few remnants of rain across northwest Arkansas, which is why that kind of portion of the state has a time frame of 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. because that line, you know, the very extreme northwest portions of the state are already picking up on rain, but more of this part of the state will start to see rain coverage increasing as we continue through the afternoon. And then I think by 4 o'clock, kind of in context to the game, how we talked about earlier, is when you'll really start to see things dying down, and likely between 3:30 and 4:30 is when we'll officially see a start time, probably per se, for that game. Now closer to central Arkansas, thinking about cities like Hot Springs, Conway, Hot Spring County included in that, because I know we had somebody from Bismarck ask the question. Think about Arkadelphia, even up to Searcy, Batesville, 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. So Tom will be coming in at 10 to kind of hang out with you from 10 to 3. I'll be back at 3 because it's likely 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock is when things will really start to kind of crank up across the Little Rock Metro. And then through like it's dinner time for a lot of us, we'll see more of that starting to shift over into southeastern Arkansas. And then southeastern Arkansas, you need to make sure you're weather aware until about this time you will be checking in with us for your evening or your night news at 10 o'clock. So again, this is kind of based off of where you live in the state, the time frame you need to be weather aware. Somebody asked the question, do you think the SBC will upgrade the tornado risk at all? I think that is unlikely, off the fact that we have kind of been aware about the potential for severe weather since about last Sunday night, Monday morning. That was when we got that first, I think it was considered day 6 at that point, outlook, where it was a slight risk. And each day as we've gotten closer to today, the SBC has maintained a slight risk of severe weather. They haven't really budged much on increasing the risk. So if they haven't increased it by now, with us especially having that high resolution data, I doubt the risk will go any higher than what we're looking at right now, especially off a second ago if you saw that tornado risk parameter. Again, if you are looking to support the Hogs today, kickoff is slated for 2:30. I'm sure people have already started to hit the road to head up to northwest Arkansas. Your commute to northwest Arkansas is most likely going to be pretty uneventful, pretty smooth, just another day on these Arkansas roads. But the game, you can probably expect some delays. Again, kind of the rule of thumb is if you have lightning strikes within an 8-mile radius of that stadium, you will get a 30-minute rain delay. To kick off slated at 2:30, it's likely we could see lightning strikes in this part of the state through 4 o'clock. So I feel like the golden time that you'll probably see the game start, if any, will be between 3:30 and 4:30. I am looking for a RDOT camera in northwest Arkansas to give you a visual of where those storms are, because we are starting to see some storms enter the state. So give me a second to pull that up for you. So this is it's not quite raining yet in Fayetteville, but the rain is still in that extreme northwest part of the state. So places like Decatur, Springtown, Centerton, probably picking up on some rainfall. What I'm going to pull up now, if we can pull up Storm Track 11, please. This is on I-49 in northwest Arkansas. This is exit 97 near Centerville, excuse me. Again, this is the northwestern corner of the state. If I'm not mistaken, this is Benton County. near Benton and Washington County in northwest Arkansas. So already picking up on some rainfall in this part of the state, taking you down a little bit closer to Fayetteville. As you can see on this map, the rain is still well off to your west, but in Fayetteville, I don't like that one. Let's pull up this one. This is looking southbound, but you can kind of see oriented southbound. The right hand side of your screen is going to be west. It's a lot darker than it is to the east as those storms are starting to roll in. At Razorback Road, this was the viewpoint we took at the start of this stream. This is pointed northbound, so to the left hand side of your screen, you see those storm clouds starting to roll in again as those storms are approaching. So if we could take it back to Max 1, the drive up for the game likely uneventful, but just expect rain delays, and even once the game starts, likely still going to be raining. Let's see if we're gonna have any questions. How is Camden looking for the weather? We can go back through her model again if you missed it. Somebody mentioned it's sunny in Cabot. Yeah, you might be seeing some peaks of sunshine out there right now. Cloud cover is really going to be building from the west ahead of that line of storms moving through. While we're talking about right now timing of the events we have today and how the rain might impact that, before I go back to kind of walking through the day ahead, let's look at how this might impact the state fair, because that's something else that, tomorrow's the last day of the fair. People are trying to get in the last they can. If you're going to try to head to the fair today, it's best that you go around opening. Gates open at 11. I think you'll have a good chunk of time between 11 and 2, maybe even 11 and 3. Where things are quiet here in central Arkansas. Cloud cover is increasing, but the storms are really going to start to roll in around 3:30, 4 o'clock closer to central Arkansas. Now, through the rest of the fair, because gates close at 9 p.m., looks like it'll continue to be rainy across central Arkansas. So not much of an opportunity to go to the fair after, I would say, 2 o'clock. 3 o'clock at latest. At that point, just wrap it up and wait for tomorrow, where we're expecting more sunshine. But a couple people have asked again about their location specifically and what that will look like as far as the timing of these storms moving through. So we're going to take you back a couple graphics to go over that again in case anybody missed it. Now, something I want to point out that's worth noting are two high resolution models, the HER and the Graph. Over the past couple days, they've disagreed a little bit as far as the exact timing of when these storms are going to roll through. But as of this morning, they are pretty much on the same page that this is 1 o'clock. That line starting to impact northwest Arkansas, starting to approach that Oklahoma-Arkansas border. By 5 o'clock, that's pretty much overhead this most central part of the state. So following along with the product to the right hand side of your screen, which is the HER, here is what we're expecting through the rest of this morning and afternoon. The cloud cover increasing from west to east into central Arkansas, and by 1 o'clock, it's likely that Fayetteville down through even just west of Fort Smith, really that line starting to approach the state and enter the state. By 4 o'clock, that main line likely impacting some of north central Arkansas, the Arkansas River Valley, down to southwestern Arkansas. Again, this is 4 o'clock. So some of our neighbors across portions of Garland County, even down to Saline County, maybe even down to Nevada County, up to portions of Conway County, through Perry and Yale County, likely picking up on some of those stronger storms at this point. That moves through the centralmost part of the state by 7 o'clock, still picking up on some of those strong storms. Again, spanning from locations like Jonesboro down to Brinkley, Stuttgart, Pine Bluff, down to Camden. Again, based off of the linear formation of this is likely more indicative of those strong straight line winds compared to supercells, where we would see those strong long-lived tornadoes. The ingredients are still there for a brief spin-up tornado to be embedded in this line, but this line is going to be most capable of producing those straight line winds. So anybody with storm anxiety, I hope this is a good way to wash away that storm anxiety. As always, make sure you have THV 11 Plus, which if you're watching me right now, you're likely watching from THV 11 Plus. If we start to get those warnings, we'll immediately start streaming on THV 11 Plus. If you're not at home and you can't stream on your TV, the THV 11 mobile app is a great resource because those watches and warnings will send a push alert to your phone for whatever county you live in. So this is by no means like a spring severe weather event where we're looking at wall-to-wall tornadoes, but it's likely we could see multiple severe thunderstorm warnings for the damaging winds. And again, the hail threat is probably the least likely threat in the state today, but it's there, and hail sizes can range anywhere from quarter size, which is the baseline to be considered severe hail, up to golf ball size, and that's going to be primarily a concern for Northwest Arkansas, West Central Arkansas, and the Arkansas River Valley. Again, it says the tornado threat is at slight risk across the entire state, but that's like a 5% risk. That is very low. It's not zero, but it's very low. So I don't want you to be anxious about that today. Again, the wind threat is going to be the most probable threat because of the kind of orientation of the formation of those storms. We're going to take this back to current radar to see what things are looking like out there. We're coming up to 9:26. The stream is set to end at 9:30. So does not look like we've got necessarily any new questions. The newest question I see is, has the SPC outlook changed? It has not changed since this morning. Still a slight risk for the entire state. So as we continue through the afternoon and that line of storms approaches, we'll see more activity over the coming hours. Right now it's just up in Northwest Arkansas where we are picking up on some rainfall. So if you live in Rogers, probably picking up on some showers and thunderstorms. Let's see if we can find an RDOT camera near Rogers before we go to give you a view of that. If we can take Storm Track 11 right quick, this is I-49. This is looking southbound west of Bella Vista Interchange. This is again near Rogers, Arkansas. So already starting to see some rain coverage up in this part of the state, but things are still quiet closer to home. So taking it back to Storm Track 11 again, we've got some severe thunderstorm warnings off to our west. Oh, I said Storm Track 11. I meant Max 1, excuse me. Thank you. We've got some severe thunderstorm warnings firing up off to our west in Oklahoma. Things still quiet closer to home right now, but again, through the afternoon, that will be changing. If you're headed up to Fayetteville today to support the Hogs, if you haven't hit the road already, just make sure you have the rain gear, you're staying safe, and you have multiple ways to receive warnings. We're coming up now on your time as almost 9:28. Again, we are set to end this stream at 9:30. So if I don't see any new questions, we'll allow this to go ahead and end at 9:30, and we'll just end at this rolling on our radar, and now continue kind of to talk over this for the next 2 minutes. So again, the main points to note is that 1 p.m. Northwest Arkansas will start to see that more of those showers and thunderstorms impacting that part of the state. If you are looking to watch that Razorback game, golden time that I personally think the game will start will be between 3:30 and 4:30, just based off of what we got from the herd today, showing us that we can still see lightning up in that part of the state probably as late as 4 o'clock. And if you get lightning at 4 o'clock, that will be 4:30 at the earliest that the game is able to start. Closer to Little Rock in the Little Rock Metro, ideal time 4 p.m., 5 p.m., we're starting to see those impacts here, and then southeastern Arkansas. So think Pine Bluff, Monticello, Dumas, places in that part of the state. You have a little bit closer to 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock to see prime time of that storm coverage. So again, we're in our final minute of this. I hope you all stay weather aware today. Go out and enjoy the weekend. We do have several hours before the storms roll in, and even after those storms move out, your Sunday is going to be gorgeous. If you missed the 7-day outlook this morning, I'll be back with another 7-day outlook at 6:30. Again, with that college football, we start a little bit later on Saturday, so 6:30, but we'll get to talk hopefully at that point about what the rest of the weekend and a preview to next week look like. Otherwise, we might be tracking some active warnings happening across the state. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms at Symone Thomas WX. If a severe thunderstorm watch is issued or even a tornado watch is issued, I'll post that update on Facebook and on Twitter. Otherwise, enjoy y'all's weekend.